Guys, today I'm going to be starting off in a different spot. I didn't end up recording it. There you go. Working on this. So I ended up actually pulling one of the cylinders out. As you can see, the way that this thing was like totaled out. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Mark, who is actually Odi Bakshi's old crew chief. And he was looking at this saying that this damage here, right there, was caused by overheating caused by running lean in lean situations. So pretty much every cylinder has it, except for cylinder 1. Well, it does have a little bit, but every cylinder has this straight line scoring in it. And when I pulled out this piston, so I actually removed this piston here, and I have it on the ground. I pulled this piston out, and when you look at it, you can see that the side of the piston actually had expanded. The side of the piston had expanded so much that it was scraping on the walls of these cylinders. So on this build, I was talking with Mark, and what I'm going to be doing with the tune is I'm going to be throwing in a bit more fuel up top to try and get away from those lean situations that are going to be causing it to overheat. And I'm going to be gapping my rings just a little bit differently. I'm going to be running a little bit looser of a gap this time. It will mean that, what that'll mean is I'm going to end up having, when I run this motor, to let it warm up. I'm going to have to wait for it to warm up before going out and doing a lap and stuff like that. Anyways, I ended up getting this out and started to take apart. So I ended up pulling, I got the oil pan off, upper and lower and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and start cleaning that today. But to start off, got this. It's called Chem Dip. This Chem Dip stuff comes with a little basket on the inside of it, and you can put bolts inside of here, or pretty much any items. You can put them inside of this solution, leave them in there for 30 minutes, pop it open, pull them out, rinse them with water, and then they'll look like brand new. So I'm gonna open this up here in just a second and throw some bolts in here. I'll show you them before, and then I'll show you them afterwards, so you can see if this is something that you guys want to be using. I've heard a lot of recommendations about running this just because of how well it is at cleaning without having to do much scrubbing at all. You can just set it in there and it's like a no-touch solution. So, alright, so here's a quick look. These are the bolts before I'm gonna put them in here. They don't look too terrible. They look like they're just kind of dirty and covered with grease. So this stuff smells horrible, by the way. I don't know if you smelled paint thinner before. It smells like paint thinner, but like 10 times worse. Time to open this bad boy up. Woo. Looking better already. Just finished up the Chem Dip, and as you can see, all the bolts are like extremely clean. All the stuff came out from. So I'm pretty happy with the results of that. I really like the way it turned out. I'm super happy to use this. What I ended up doing though is I ended up putting them in a drill bit and using some Scotch-Brite because there was a little bit of stuff that was stuck on them. There's the 1J block right here. Here's the 2J block. I got them all wrapped up. I think the crank is still in decent shape and the rods are still good. The pistons are pretty messed up though. The heads of them had expanded inside the cylinders and had really just ruined the, they scored up the side of the wall pretty good. So if someone wanted to buy that and bore it over, they'd be set to go and they'd have a bored over 1J. I've got all those bolts cleaned. I'm waiting on the bearings. I'm gonna kick back in this tomorrow, cleaning those bolts. Or getting the 1J off the stand and all torn apart took like most of the day. But yeah, there's quite a bit left to do in this thing, and I'm really excited to see how this is going to turn out, because honestly, I just want a good running like JZ in my car. I don't want it to break. So today I have all the stuff ready for the 1.5J. I've got the gaskets, I've got the bearings, I've got the rings, and I've got the timing belt. So I'm going to get started on this. I'm going to rip this open. Okay, so let's open this thing up real quick, and I'll show you the differences between the turbo and non-turbo blocks, or how you can tell the differences between the turbo and non-turbo blocks. These two spots right here would have been the actual oil feeds for your turbos, and on NA blocks they do not have those drilled and tapped out. I've heard of people actually drilling and tapping those out, but you have to like remove something that like blocks it off from getting oil over here. I don't know, sounds complicated, really don't want to do it. So On this block, actually, it's a VVTi block. So it has an actual oil feed here on the side where it would have been the passage of oil that goes up to the head to activate the VVTi solenoid. I'm gonna be using the VVTi feed as the oil supply for my turbo. If you get your block hot tanked, one of the suggested things to do is to go get ATF and lint-free rags and go and wipe down the cylinder walls. That way you're getting all the contaminants that didn't come out in the hot tank off the walls. And from what I've heard, they always come out, like no matter what, like it always will happen that way. You'll always have to go and do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now, and I'm gonna wipe these down, and I'll show you real quick exactly why you wipe these down. So when you start wiping down with the ATF fluid, you already see a bunch of contaminants that are gonna come up. Look at that. Tons of stuff coming out still. And this is right after it was hot tanked. So I'm gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna set up a time lapse, and I'm just gonna go through and do the rest of these and clean them up right now. Alright, so I am now done wiping through all of these cylinders. Well, they're as clean as I'm going to get them at this point. I mean, I did this for a while. I stopped the time lapse and just kept going with it because I figured it would be kind of boring. I'm happy with it. What I'm going to do next is I have so much crap I have to do next. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to tape off the deck of the block. So I'm going to tape that all off, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Scotch-Briting the sides of this so that I can spray this, or spray some paint on this to get this all one color. I will get back to you guys after I have Scotch-Brited the living hell out of this thing. Okay, so it is painted. It's the next day. It's all dried up, and I went with silver again because that's what I did my last block. I think it looks better, and you're able to spot all the oil that drips down. But I think it turned out pretty good. Turned out definitely a lot better than the last one that I painted. Let's see here. Look at that. Nice and clean. So I'm going to strip off this tape and get started. I think I'm going to start putting like the bearings and the crank in today, which I'm pretty freaking excited about. So I have assembly lube and everything to get started, but one of the things I really need to do is I need to clean my garage because during this whole process, my garage has gotten kind of screwed up. So I'm gonna clean my garage, and then I'm gonna get started on assembling the motor. Okay, so I now have the motor flipped over, all cleaned out. I went down and wiped every single one of the spots where the bearings are gonna go, and I wiped down the main caps. So I'm just about ready to start assembling this motor. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm going to make sure that I have everything in order to start putting this together, get the crank in. I'm gonna put the bearings in, assembly loop, and I'm going to put the crank in, and I'm pretty excited actually to get this stage done with. I just want to see that nice shiny crank right in here, and the crank is super shiny after I got it taken and got polished. Super exciting. I'm super ready to put this in here. So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna set a time lapse up. So I forgot to start recording right when I started. I actually just got into it, started putting them in, and I realized I wasn't recording. So that's why it starts like halfway through on the time lapse. Anyways, got them all in right now, and then the next thing is to lube them up and put the crank in. I'm really pumped to get this crank in here. This thing looks like freaking fresh. So I'm gonna pull these back out now. Whoops. I'm gonna pull these back out now, and I am going to get started on lubing this up, oiling these, and putting it together. Filing down the piston rings. I just did all the top ones. I cleaned all the cylinders. This is my rag to clean with, and this is the piston that I'm using to center them all down in the bore. So I've got them all down to the gap that I'm looking for for the top rings, and now I have to do the second ring. Now I've got to do the second ring. So I'm going to start on the second ring. I'm going to set up a little time lapse so you guys can see exactly how I'm doing it for these. So I'll set that up now. These rings in, a lot of them will come. I wonder if they'll say, can you kind of see it says top right there on the ring? So on all of these, I've set them all in facing up. So I've set them all in facing up, top up, and now I'm going to go and start pushing them down with the piston upside down, and that'll like make sure that they're all even in there. I'm checking the initial gap size that is within these rings, and then I'm going and filing them to fit to the size that I would like. So I'm going to put it up on a time lapse of me pushing them all down. Okay, so I just finished getting all the rings on the pistons filed down to fit exactly in here. I just clocked them. They look really dirty, but that's all just assembly lube on there. It's like dark black assembly lube. It's really weird. But I put a bunch on there just to make sure that they're gonna slide in good. I have them all in order over here. So I'm gonna put a light coat of assembly lube in each of the cylinders, and then I'm going to compress them. And I made sure to keep them in the order of which rings, so they're filed to fit per each cylinder. So yeah, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a little bit of assembly lube inside the cylinder walls. I'm gonna compress the springs, and then I'm gonna slide them down in. Okay, so it's next day. We're prepping the motor to get it in. So one of the things we needed to do was clean the engine bay. So we just sprayed it down with some of this cheapo foamy degreaser stuff.
Let me see the brand. Let me see it.
O'Reilly's, dog. It's the cheap stuff.
What is it?
Foamy engine degreaser. And we're just killing the environment, you know. One can at a time. We'll spray it off. I don't know if you saw it in one of the other clips of this, but the bay was like super nasty. Like over here is like a bunch of burnt paint. Cause I mean,
yeah, you can start to see it here.
Right, it's sliding down. But yeah, at least it's getting the dirt out. We're getting it cleaned up, so that way it's nice and easy when I put the motor in, and it's not like stupid dirty in here. That stuff. We're gonna close the video out here. Thank you guys for watching. Next video, we are gonna have the 1J or 1.5J. I'm gonna get used to saying that. 1.5J completely assembled and ready to go into the car. And then we got a bit of tuning and some fun wiring. All right, thanks for watching.